What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to America's Finest Sports. It's Monday. It's Labor Day, so I hope everybody, that's working right now got to enjoy their day off. I know I did. But in today's video, we're going to be, or at least today's live stream, we're going to be previewing the NFL season. We're going to be talking about some award predictions, player predictions, team statements, all these things. So if, you're in the live stream, let us know in the comment section down below, your hot takes, your not so hot takes. What do you think is going to happen this year? Because every year there's things that happen that surprise us and things that happen that everybody knew. Like, last year, Matt and I knew the New York Giants would not be a very good football team. A lot of people didn't know that. We did. So overall, what we're going to do today is just talk about all those different players. And I'm going to start us off because, I think there's one player that I really want to talk about. That's Mr. Christian McCaffrey. Because Christian McCaffrey, if you guys don't know, is my favorite football player that I ever watched outside of Andrew Luck. I'm a Stanford football fan, so, there's potential bias coming from me. But I truly believe that at Stanford, I think he's the greatest, best football player to ever play at Stanford. But in the NFL, Carolina Panthers this season, I believe Christian McCaffrey is going to have a 1,000 season once again. Now, why do I say that? One, he's very capable. He's done it before, and he's now in a situation that I believe he is actually in a better spot than he was back when he actually did the 1,000 season. Now, obviously, anytime, I'm going to preface this so we don't have to say it again. Anytime we say full season predictions, that is if they are healthy, all right? And you can't say, oh, well, what if he gets hurt? I can make a video on any player. Any player. I could say Tom Brady throws 45 touchdowns. I could say, Justin Jefferson leads the league in receiving. If they get hurt, it's not going to happen, okay? So that is the preface for this entire live stream. If we say a player is going to do something, that's saying if they're healthy. So Christian McCaffrey, looking at that Carolina Panthers team, one, he's playing with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's going to be able to check the ball down to him. Christian McCaffrey's going to get the ball in open space. Two, they have really good wide receivers, or at least good wide receivers that are playmakers. DJ Moore, I really like. I think Baker Mayfield and Robbie Anderson could be a decent combo. I don't think they're going to be, Brady to Moss, but I think they're going to be decent. And then I think Terrace Marshall Jr. can maybe come through, but it's going to allow Christian McCaffrey to maybe have a little bit more open room. But I mean, he only needs to rush for 1,000 yards, to get the 1,000 season. And for an elite running back to rush for 1,000 yards, almost every elite running back does it. Zeke did it last year. And a lot of people said Zeke was terrible last year. He still ran for 1,000 yards. So getting 1,000 yards rushing, I don't think will be the problem. It'll be the receiving. And I think he's going to have enough opportunities to just catch the ball out of the backfield where he's going to get the 1,000 yards. I mean, he's going to probably get 100 receptions. And that's going to lead to those yards. The last time we saw him healthy, 1,000 season. I fully expect that to happen again. And it's not saying, I know it's only been done 3 times, but I think it's very similar to the Russell Westbrook effect, where like some players are just built the way, and the way that they play is towards a certain statistical standpoint. Westbrook is the first player since Oscar Robertson, to average the triple-double, because that's the way he plays. It's very different from other people. He can do it multiple times. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is the same way. He can have multiple 1,000 seasons because that's the exact play style that the Carolina Panthers need from him, and that's the exact skill set that he brings to the table. Do you think that's how bold of a take do you think that is, Matt?
I think if he's healthy, I don't think it's that bold, but that's going to be the big question, of course, with him. So, I mean, if you look at his past seasons, the last 2 years he was healthy, in 2018 and 2019, he had over 100 receptions in both those years. I think this year, I think he's going to probably have a significantly reduced role in terms of the rushing game and the rushing aspect. I think they're going to try to keep him healthy. They got Dante Foreman. He was really good in Tennessee last year, kind of like in between the tackles, which does hurt McCaffrey because McCaffrey's a great in between the tackles runner. I think that's one of the areas of his game that he doesn't really get enough credit for. But he's not going to probably be put in too many of those spots, or at least as many as he was in past seasons when he had a lot of success. So I actually think that in the terms of his rushing ability, like, it probably got hurt quite a bit. However, receiving-wise, the Panthers don't have a super strong receiving core. They have DJ Moore, and they have Terrace Marshall Jr., who's, I mean, I like him coming out and stuff, but, like, we got to see it from him first.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson was awful last year. And then Laviska Shenault, Rashad Higgins, some guys like that. And then their tight end right now is Tommy Tremble. And Tommy Tremble is super young. I think that he could be good down the road, but in terms of somewhere for Baker to target in the middle of the field, because Baker typically throws the ball in the middle of the field a lot, Christian McCaffrey's the main guy. however they use him. They might line him up in the slot a little bit. They might motion him out. They might do little like kind of gimmick plays and like stuff that we've seen with guys like Tyreek Hill and Debo Samuel, like receivers. But we might see that with him, where they use him a little bit as like a weapon like that. So I think it's going to be a really different season for McCaffrey. I'm really excited to see what the Panthers do because the past couple years, his wear and tear has got to him, and he's just kind of got dinked up a few times. So if they're able to find a way to limit his touches in kind of the ground and pound area, so that might hurt for like touchdown production, but I think it will help his season. I think it'll help his odds of being a guy that does have a thousand yard season because he's definitely capable, like you said. So it may have only been done a couple times, and him doing it multiple times would be a crazy accomplishment. But in terms of the skill set, in terms of the situation, I think there's a lot of reason to believe that he can do it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they look at Christian McCaffrey and they look at this roster, it's like, oh, but they're all going to sell out on Christian McCaffrey. But that's what they did in 2018 and 2019. It's always been selling out. Teams sell out to stop Derrick Henry. Teams sell out to stop Jonathan Taylor. But when you're that good, when you're in that kind of tier, especially McCaffrey, because McCaffrey's not just a run it between the tackles. You can just say, oh, you're going to, stack the box. McCaffrey's going to have a receiving game. And it's, 12 receptions, 115 yards, 45 rushing yards. And then there's games where they go, oh, we're not going to let McCaffrey beat us with the pass. And then McCaffrey goes up the middle and goes, oh, yeah, I had a 65-yard rushing touchdown and then, averaged 4.5 yards per carry, and I finished with 115 yards, but I only got 40 yards receiving. He's just like that consistent where it's just like, it seems like every game, it's about 70 yards on each side of, rushing and receiving. He's good for about 140 yards a game, just whatever lopside. Sometimes it's 100 yards rushing, sometimes it's 100 yards receiving. He just does it all. Whatever they need him to do, that's exactly what, he's going to end up doing. I think it's very similar to a lot of these other dual threat players in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is sometimes he's going to beat you with, 280 yards passing and 35 yards rushing. Sometimes it's 150 yards rushing and 125 yards passing. It just depends on the defense and what they give you. The Bill Belichick style. Sometimes Brady's going to throw for 400. Sometimes they're going to run the ball with whoever they have at running back, whether it's Sony Michel or LeGarrette Blount. They're going to beat you. Whatever it takes, that's what he's going to be able to do because he's just that versatile. But Matt, do you want to get into another take? Do you want to give a take or do you want me to give another one?
So you were going to give a take, but I like talking about this guy as well. And I kind of felt similar to you, where I think your McCaffrey take, you were probably more strong on that than I was necessarily. But the next guy was Juju. So you were basically saying that Juju can come out and he can be a Pro Bowl caliber receiver and kind of be the guy that he was early on in Pittsburgh when they had when Big Ben was a much better player. And I like that a lot too. I think in terms of like fantasy this year, he's an amazing fantasy pick. I think he's pretty clearly in terms of the wide receiving core because I think Travis Kelce is the main guy there, but I think he's the other guy. I think he is the number one receiver there. I would be extremely shocked if anyone was able to be the number one there. And I think he's going to have a fantastic season. I think this is going to be a pretty big resurgence here for Juju because I think Juju was a little bit overrated for a while, and now he's become a guy that's like drastically underrated.
Yeah, it always seems to happen, especially with, Juju Smith-Schuster is very controversial because people hate him because of his TikToks. And if he didn't make those TikToks, I don't think anybody would talk about him. But, he was playing on a team where it just didn't work. Juju Smith-Schuster is, kind of a slot receiver. He's very physical, but he can also beat you over the top. I think he's the only player. I think he has the two longest receiving touchdowns in the last 5 years in the NFL. I think they're both 97 yards, which is just unbelievable. But it's he's very explosive. And now he's in a Chiefs offense where, he's not the focal point for the first time in, since Antonio Brown, in Pittsburgh. And he was that year he was unbelievable. He came out of college young, out of USC. I want to say he was 19 or 20 years old. And it was man, this guy's going to be an absolute stud. And then AB got hit by Vontaze Burfict. And it was just whatever happened to AB, I don't know. And then it was okay, Juju, you have to be our guy. But also, Big Ben's going to consecutively get worse, and we're going to lose our run game. Our offensive line is going to become bad. We're not going to have a tight end. And yeah, save us. And he's not that type of player. I don't think that's why he wasn't a first round pick. He was a mid-round guy because it was like, this guy can be a great role player. This guy can be a really solid wide receiver in the NFL. He can be, a stud. But he wasn't drafted to be, Devontae Adams. He wasn't drafted to be Antonio Brown or Calvin Johnson. It was, hey, let's get the guy next to AB. And Juju fit perfectly in that mold. Now he's going into Kansas City where Patrick Mahomes is going to find a way. For some reason, I don't know why, but it always feels like Patrick Mahomes is somehow underrated by a lot of people. Like, I don't get it. But, like, Patrick Mahomes is going to find a way to get anybody to ball out that plays wide receiver with him. And now he's got a guy, because Patrick Mahomes loves to throw, like, these weird passes, right? Where it's like, oh, man, I don't know if I would have thrown that. But at the same time, he was open. Juju's going to get the ball in space. Juju is very good after the catch. He's difficult to bring down. He's physical. And he's got breakaway speed. Put that in the Chiefs offense. I mean, and they got Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Mecole Hardman, playing wide receiver as well. That's already speed. Teams are going to be watching over the top because of that speed. Juju is going to destroy the middle of the field with Travis Kelce. Underneath and across the middle of the field. I mean, I feel sorry for the linebackers playing zone coverage. Because, I mean, they are just going to get torn apart over and over again. And I think that is going to be one of the scariest pass-catching duos, maybe the scariest pass-catching duo in the NFL. Not because they're Travis Kelce is the best, but not because the two of them are the two best at what they do. It's because they're both doing a similar thing that is just destroying every defense. Mahomes is going to feast with Juju. If you are playing fantasy football, PPR formats, half PPR, Juju Smith-Schuster is an absolute must-get. At his ADP and stuff like that. But, getting back to the Pro Bowl, one, he's playing with the Chiefs. And so that's automatically going to get you primetime games. That's automatically going to get you a spotlight because you're going to have highlights with Patrick Mahomes. You're also going to be really good. It's hard to make the Pro Bowl when your offense sucks, like the Pittsburgh Steelers offense has. You look at teams where it's like, oh, yeah, they had 8 Pro Bowlers. They had 7 Pro Bowlers. It's like, why? Because they're really good. And it's not like, oh, well, that's obvious. But when your team overall is really good, players that may not necessarily warrant a Pro Bowl and guys that are underrated because their team sucks don't make it because the fans don't know about them. It's fan voting. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be in the spotlight once again. He's going to get a lot of votes because he's playing with Patrick Mahomes. He's going to put up great numbers. He's going to score touchdowns. It's also going to have a lot of ESPN dances that are going to be put up. The Jackson Mahomes videos may get kind of annoying. I don't know if he's going to make any of those with him, but we'll see. We'll see Juju's TikTok presence this year with Patrick Mahomes. But
I wanted to bring up one more thing about the Chiefs because you brought this up, and I agree with you. Somehow the Chiefs always get underrated. Like people are kind of looking at them now like, oh, they're going to take a step back. They lost these guys. Look at their division. It's not a very strong division in terms of off-ball linebackers, and they have Travis Kelce and Juju to go in the middle of the field, and then they have a bunch of guys that are extremely fast. They're going to destroy teams with the speed over the top and Mahomes is just going to have quick hitters open all day because they're going to have to respect the deep ball. So they're going to spread it out. They're going to play a lot of probably more spread than we've seen with Mahomes, even though they spread out. They bring an extra receiver out quite a bit. But we're going to see a lot of that just kind of letting Mahomes just go and make plays or just do quick dump offs and just get a few yards and let Travis Kelce sit in the stop. I mean, it's hard because if you go man, you might get burnt quite a bit. But if you go zone, Kelce and Juju are just going to eat you alive. The receiving core works. That's the thing. It might not be big in terms of names or anything like that outside of Kelce, but it definitely works from a scheme standpoint. So I think they're going to be pretty good there as well.
Definitely. I think also, yeah, I like how you brought up the off-ball linebackers, but they're going to be in shootouts. It seems like every divisional game that they play in, it's going to be a shootout. Chargers, Raiders, Broncos, those are all shootout games. And they're, again, Pro Bowl is based on the media perception. No matter how good you are, if you're not making highlight plays, people aren't going to vote you to the Pro Bowl. Juju Smith-Schuster is in the media no matter what, because one, people are talking about his TikToks. 2, he's doing funny. I love his touchdown celebrations. And 3, he's making big plays. And now it's going to be Patrick Mahomes sidearm throw or Patrick Mahomes no-look throw. Juju Smith-Schuster catches the ball, trucks over a DB, touchdown. That gets you to the Pro Bowl. And I know there's a lot of really tough wide receivers, They're going to be vying for that in the AFC. But how can a wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs playing with Patrick Mahomes not make the Pro Bowl? You got to have one because Mahomes is going to put up, 4,800 yards. He's going to put up,
That might
35,
be
40
that might be
touchdowns.
underselling him, dude.
Oh, yeah.
4,800
I
yards.
mean, he may put up 5,500 yards. I don't even care. Like, Mahomes is going to put up just godly numbers no matter what. Kelsey's going to get a lot of them, but there's going to be a wide receiver getting them too. Most star quarterbacks, when they're that good, they get a wide receiver to the Pro Bowl. Almost always. So, Juju should return to the Pro Bowl. I'm fully expecting it with, just playing with Patrick Mahomes. And also, he's super talented and underrated now. Is he top 10? No. But he's now a number one offense that he fits in, perfectly. I was mad because I wanted Juju on the Ravens because great run blocker, physical. Thought he'd be perfect. And then the Chiefs got him, and I'm like, of course they got him. Just glad he's not in Pittsburgh because he's really annoying in Pittsburgh, having to play him twice a year. But let's move on to the next guy. We're actually sticking in the AFC West. Let's talk about Mr. Let's Ride, Russell Wilson. Because I believe right now, if I had to pick a player that was going to win the NFL MVP, I'm going with Russell Wilson. I know you can look at all the players and you can say, oh, but Josh Allen, oh, but Justin Herbert, oh, obviously Brady, Rodgers, those guys are always going to be in the mix. I love Lamar Jackson. I really want him to win, MVP again. But Russell Wilson, I feel like this is the best situation he's ever had to win MVP. And when I talk about MVP, it's always about the narrative. What's the narrative? Oh, well, this guy had to overcome this setback. Russell Wilson's narrative is he's never won MVP. Every year, the national media tries to force it. The problem is, I've said this every single year. It's like Russell Wilson after week 6, everyone's like, oh, he's the MVP. He's the MVP. And every year, I did this, especially in, I believe it was 2020 when Aaron Rodgers ended up winning the MVP. I was like, Russell Wilson will not receive an MVP vote. Why? Because the Seahawks won't win enough games. And, the team isn't good enough. That's exactly what happened. The team fell off, and Aaron Rodgers ended up stepping up. Now, he's going to be winning games. He's got a great receiving core. And the narrative is going, Russell Wilson's going to have games where he's throwing 5 touchdowns. I think that's an absolute given. This offense is going to be explosive, and people love him. The media loves him. I know he's corny, but man, does that guy shine in every single big moment of his career. You put the lights on, he is the most fun. I hate watching him because I really don't like the Seahawks, but he is the most fun quarterback in the NFL to watch in prime time. And I love watching all those great quarterbacks, but man, Russell Wilson shines like nobody else in prime time. And those votes are going to stack up. The national media is going to be talking about him. And think about back to Peyton Manning. New situation, goes to Denver, puts up unbelievable numbers. I fully expect Russell Wilson's going to put up unbelievable numbers. I think he could be, 4,500 yards. He could throw for 40, 45 touchdowns. He could absolutely be in the top of the NFL in those stats because look at what he does at the beginning of the year. It seems like every year for the Seahawks for the last few years. It's like, oh, Russell Wilson, 3 of the first 5 games, threw for 5 touchdowns. And then, unfortunately, the offensive line completely fell apart and they started losing. He's going to be in shootouts all the time, and he's going to outduel a lot of players. We've talked about the Broncos before. I think this team is super stacked. I think that they're going to win their division, and Russell Wilson is going to be the MVP. That's my MVP, take coming into the year. I think it's Russell Wilson. And his odds right now are at about 1,200 last I checked. So I think they're really good odds if you're going to bet on it. But that dude is going to, trust me, that guy is going to absolutely put up numbers.
Yeah, I'm there with you in terms of how he's going to put up numbers in terms of the touchdown category. But the problem is that Russell Wilson never really throws for many yards. I think some of that you can attribute to that the Seahawks just want to run the football a lot no matter what up until the last couple of years where he's thrown over 4,000. But looking at in terms of passing numbers, 2021 was his best year, and he threw for 4,200 yards. He just doesn't throw for a lot of yards, so I don't know if he's going to have the numbers. And I think that division is so tough. Where I think in terms of the narrative is he's taking over a team, and they're stacked, but they haven't been playing well. And it's like, is Russell Wilson that guy? And then, of course, he's going to answer, yes, he's that guy. They're going to be super good. But I don't know if he's going to be able to put up the numbers because I still think they're going to be able to run the football a lot. I think they're going to get ahead in games early on. I think that he's going to be able to lean on Javonte in that run game because they have a much better O-line than he's had. He's still going to be able to take the deep shots. Defenses are going to have to, give a lot of respect and some. I like their receiving core is good too. So like, it's tough in terms of like their offense is so amazing, but I don't think the production's there in terms of his personal production. I think that in terms of like actual performance, he's going to be up there, and I think that he should be like higher up in like. I think he like at the end of the year we're gonna look back at it. We're gonna go, damn, Russell Wilson was probably truly like the MVP, but he didn't have the numbers to necessarily get it, or he didn't win enough games. You're muted.
Think about the perception that Russell Wilson's going to have. Because again, like you brought up, the take over the team. This is going to be a guy that comes into a Broncos team. And I know the Broncos, they did end up winning 7 games last year, but they were terrible. They were not a good football team. They really struggled. Their quarterback play was terrible. Russell Wilson is going to come in, and all of a sudden, it's no longer going to be, oh man, the quarterback situation is just holding him back. It's Russell Wilson is what they added. The running backs are the same. The wide receivers are the same. The defense is basically the same. So it's Russell Wilson is the addition. They didn't make major additions. They lost players.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying like they didn't add players.
Okay, I get you.
Russell Wilson is the addition. He's going to take over this team, and they are going to be one of the scariest, if not the scariest team in the NFL to play this year. With one player joining them. And they, again, like you brought up, Von Miller leaving helps their argument because he's probably going to be really good Buffalo. You're like, man, they even lost Von Miller? And it's like, wow. But Russell Wilson, just had another 4-touchdown game. And it's like, yeah, but Javonte was running the ball. Yeah, well, Javonte was running the ball with Drew Lock, and they were still not winning. So it's like Russell Wilson is just going to go out there because it's just like his mentality is it's so weird because he's so corny. He's so weird. But I mean, he's already got the hype. I know that like it's such a meme. The Broncos
like
country, let's ride.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
It's already like, I mean, that's going to be the MVP. Like, that's going to be the conversation is Russell Wilson, let's ride. MVP conversation right now. Like, that's what I feel like the media is going to bring that up.
No, I think that's all super fair. Like, I agree with all of that. And I think he's going to be really good. I think at the end of the day, when you look up, there's going to be, I see aces in here. So there's going to be a Justin Herbert that has a similar record, but has better numbers, even though like him personally isn't performing at like that level because Russell Wilson's in the perfect spot and he's in his prime. Like that's what we got to realize. He's still insanely good. I think that he kind of gets forgotten about the last few seasons he's had with like one of the just crappiest rosters in the league. So I agree in terms of performance, but I just don't think he's going to be able to, like when we look up, it's going to be like, all right, he threw for 4,500 yards. That's really like more than he's ever thrown. It's like 300, 400 yards more than he's ever thrown.
Well, that's also an
extra game
of the season. So that's about, his best. But remember, it's national media voting. If it was fan voting, he's not winning.
No, I think that if it's fan voting, he might have more.
The national media loves Russell Wilson. They adore him. And they're going to look at it like, Justin Herbert's got a future. He can win MVP another year. For some reason, I think it's wrong.
Russell Wilson's year kind of deal?
Yeah. Like, I get it that it's wrong. But the way the national media, it always seems like they want to push a narrative.
Yeah.
Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, the media understands they're going to win one, right? They know
Allen
they're elite.
Okay, Allen could.
Allen absolutely could.
Herbert could. Honestly, both of them could.
Both of them could, but it's like they're so young.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a situation where it's like, okay, all of them are, vying, they're all on some of the best teams, but like, come on, Broncos, Chargers, they get to play each other twice.
Mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson wins those games.
Well, he's going to be playing Mahomes. He's going to be playing against all those teams, and
he gets the prove it opportunities.
Yeah, no, he definitely does. I think I can get a lot more behind it if they were to win the AFC West. But the problem is that the AFC West it's so hard to predict who's going to win because there's 4 really good teams in it. Like that doesn't really happen.
Yeah. I mean, I've already said I think that I've already said multiple times I think they're going to win the AFC West. So
I think it's too hard to predict. Like, and I don't think it's like a bad take or anything. Like, I think they're good enough, but I also think that you can easily make a case for the Chargers, Raiders, and Chiefs as well. And that's why I have such a hard time with to see Russell Wilson. But I like I like the take. It's good, and I think it's a guy that probably he never gets like any love before, and then the first month of the season, the big storyline is gonna be Russell Wilson winning MVP race. Like McConnell, we know that's gonna happen in a month or two. So I
it's
like that
Kyler
aspect
and
of it
Russ
too.
at the beginning of the year, but Russ won't fall off. Like that's probably what's going to happen. Especially just because, again, like the way that he performs in these big games, it's so annoying because I always root against the Seahawks. He always just wins. It's like, dude, stop. And honestly, I legitimately feel the Broncos country let's ride. Even though it's so stupid, I think that's going to give him some sort of hashtag, some sort of way to promote it because it's like, again, it's so stupid. I hate saying it. Broncos country, let's ride. But that is the Russell Wilson coming in to Denver and saying, let's do this. And that was his introduction. Was like, let's get it going. Let's do it. Let's win. That is going to, I believe, build that momentum where like the narrative is already started. Russell Wilson has come in here and the Broncos aren't hyped up nearly as much as the Chargers. Because, like, you look at expectations, right? Justin Herbert's expectation. I mean, people are expecting Herbert to throw for 5,000 yards and 45 touchdowns, it feels like. Like, they're like, Justin Herbert's going to be the greatest football player of all time this year. It seems like people are expecting. If he isn't, it's going to be hard for him to win MVP. A lot of people are looking at Russ, and they're like, yeah, Russ is really good. But I know people that are like, man, Russell Wilson, he's just not in his prime anymore, just hasn't been the same guy. And I see a lot of people saying that. Russell Wilson's going to come out, and they're going to be like, wow. And he's going to have 4 or 5 stupid run around backwards, throw it off the back foot, first down plays to Sutton or Albert Okwuegbunam or Javonte Williams, whoever you want to say. The stupid Russell Wilson plays that we always get every year that always kill my night on primetime football. And everyone's going to be like, it's the same stuff that Mahomes does, right? Oh, man, that play was unbelievable. Russell Wilson is one of the few quarterbacks that gets that treatment. You see him throw off that back foot? Did you see that? I feel like Herbert doesn't get that as much as you would expect.
Well, it's
like they
also
get the Herbert played great.
Okay, but keep in mind this too. I think this is why Herbert has had a lot less moments on primetime TV. Like Mahomes has had the most primetime moments on TV as like a young quarterback as like anyone.
Yeah.
And that's probably why we're gonna start seeing more of that from the younger guys too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's an interesting take. I don't know if it's hard to guess MVP, but I think there's a decent chance it happens.
Yeah, and I think especially at the odds, like if you're thinking about it and you're looking at this whole situation and you're saying, oh, who do you want to bet? Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, or Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson is like 3 times better odds, because they're sitting at like, I mean, maybe it's double. Maybe they're at like 600. Russell Wilson at 1,200 is like, why is he this far back? Like, I think Aaron Rodgers is higher than him. I'm like, three-peating? One, that's almost impossible to do in the NFL. The last person to do it, I guess, did play for the Green Bay Packers. The only person to ever do it played for the Green Bay Packers, Mr. Favre. But now people are going to think it's Favre. No, it's Brett Favre. I call him Favre. I don't care. But like his odds are unbelievable. So if you're a betting person, which I am, Russell Wilson's the guy to put your money on. If you want, like, okay, this guy's very good. I put my money on Lamar, but I'm a Ravens fan. I wanted to see it. Russell Wilson's the best bet. Matt, do you have any hot takes, player takes, team takes that you want to get into?
Yeah. So the one that I like a lot is a certain receiver that I think is one of the better receivers that we've just kind of forgotten about a little bit. Comes out in a class, one of the most, we've seen like a few classes now recently that are like the most stacked wide receiver class ever. Feels like we're starting to see that a lot. But this guy hasn't really put up a true star season yet, and I think he's bound to this year. I'm talking about CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is now in an opportunity where they just lost so many targets in that offense, and Amari Cooper's been there. And it's CeeDee's time. It's CeeDee's time to kind of take over and kind of show everyone that he is a star caliber player. He was my favorite receiver in that class coming out. Now, Justin Jefferson is kind of, I feel like put that to rest up to this point. But I don't know if we're going to see him quite on like the Justin Jefferson level right now or like Jamar Chase level. But we might see him kind of emerge into the spot where he's like just one of those guys that's right below that. He's one of the best young wide receivers in the league. Like I think we're going to see that he is a star player. I think in terms of fantasy stuff, I think that he could be a top 5 finisher. Like I think he's like has that kind of ability. And I wanted to put up a play here just because I feel like everyone kind of forgets how nasty CD was in college. Just because I mean, it's not like he doesn't make any.
Is
good
this the
plays.
Texas play?
Yeah.
It is the Texas play.
And like, dude, like this play is just so disgusting. Like his ability to make guys miss in an offense where he's going to get so many opportunities is insane. Like this is one of the stupidest plays. He also has one where he does like the double spin. Like this guy is just nasty, dude. So I don't know. I think that CeeDee Lamb kind of gets put on the back burner just because we've seen Justin Jefferson come out and be so amazing. We've seen Jamar Chase come out and be ridiculous, right? But I think he's close to those guys. I don't think he's quite there, but like he's unbelievable. I think he's going to be kind of known as one of the better receivers in the NFL after this year.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of CeeDee Lamb. Matt, the first article that we had posted, either of us had posted on when we first started up the Worst Take network, original idea. That was the founding thing of everything that we've created. We used to write articles, and the first article that anyone had ever written that did well was Matt's article talking about 3 wide receivers: Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs, ranking them, scouting them. Matt, you had a guy at the top of the list by the name of CeeDee Lamb. Why? Because of his ability after the catch and his just overall feel for the game. And again, like you said, Justin Jefferson right now, I think, has solidified himself, as the best guy from that class. But he's got competition from the guy that went right before him, now in that Minnesota Vikings locker room, Jalen Reagor. But CeeDee Lamb was drafted to the Dallas Cowboys in a really good spot. And that's the thing, is like he had Jerry Jeudy has had moments where you're like, man, he's got to fix the drops. CeeDee Lamb throughout his whole career has been like, wow, this guy looks pretty good. But he's been the number 2 behind Amari Cooper. And last year I think we started to see where it's like, okay, CeeDee Lamb seems better than Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper's kind of the focal point, still kind of in the passing game because Dak's been throwing to him a little bit longer. Amari Cooper's just, more in tune with those types of situations. And don't get me wrong, Amari Cooper is a stud, fantastic route runner, and him and Dak just had a great connection. But CeeDee Lamb, his threat in the NFL is after the catch. He's also very good before the catch. He's a pretty solid route runner. He's got good hands, but he's after the catch. And the Dallas Cowboys this year are in need of someone to step up. And I don't think it's going to be Zeke, even though I love Zeke. I'm a huge Ezekiel Elliott fan. I think he's super underrated. But right now, it's very clear that it's CeeDee Lamb's turn. And I think the way that the Dallas Cowboys have approached everything around him, they fully believe in him, and I do too. I think you're 100% right, man. I think after this year, CeeDee Lamb is going to be in that top 10. And I think a good comparison in terms of like tier of player is the Mike Evans tier, where it's like, everyone looks at them and they go, actually, Mike Evans is kind of super underrated right now. I don't know why a bunch of people are now saying he's not top 10. But in my eyes, Mike Evans is like number 8 in the NFL, number 7.
If Mike Evans is in top 10, that's ridiculous. Mike Evans, he's top 10 every single season. I know. Every year. It doesn't even matter who his quarterback is.
I've been seeing a lot of people on TikTok be like, Mike Evans isn't actually that good. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I think he's going to be in that tier where it's like, okay, he's not Devontae Adams. He's not, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, but he's right below them. And he's a guy that you can absolutely have as your number 1 wide receiver. Remember when he got drafted, I believe he wanted to be number 2, or he did not want to be number 88. And Jerry Jones went up to him and said, hey, I really want you to be number 88. And if you don't know, the Dallas Cowboys do not retire number 88. When you cannot choose the number 88, you are drafted as a wide receiver, and they have to approach you and say, we want you to be number 88. They did it with Michael Irvin. They did it with Dez Bryant. They did it with CeeDee Lamb. They fully believe in him. Jerry fully believed in him, and he has a good rapport with Dak. This is, I think a lot of people were like, oh, CeeDee Lamb, he's not really going to be that crazy. It's not like CeeDee Lamb has been someone that just hasn't done anything in his career. He has had a lot of just big time games, throughout his career where it's like, oh, wow, look at that. CeeDee Lamb, takes the lead late in the game for the Dallas Cowboys. And he's just playing with a guy in Dak Prescott who loves to throw the ball and, is a pretty good thrower of the football. So, Matt, I do think he's going to get into that next year. I think he's definitely going to make some plays after the catch because their running game is not explosive. The running game, I think, is going to be good. I think Zeke will be solid, 4 yards a carry. But Zeke and Tony Pollard aren't going to be breaking off 50, 60, 70-yard runs. The big plays are going to come from CeeDee Lamb, 20 yards over the middle of the field. I think compare him to A.J. Brown and his explosiveness. There's not a lot of deep balls. It's catching it over the middle of the field
But the thing,
and
dude, but the
breaking a
thing is,
tackle.
CD can do that too. Like
Oh,
CD does
exactly.
it all. That's the
Yes.
thing. And he's very physical, like you said, across the middle. But then there's also the yak ability, and that's why he's a guy that can just break out and be one of the better guys in the league, given that opportunity. It's also not like he hasn't been bad or anything. Like he just hasn't really had a crazy touchdown numbers. It's probably the worst. But I think he had 5 as a rookie and 6 last year, and then he had like 1,000 yards and like 1,100 yards or something like that. It wasn't like crazy yardage and crazy touchdowns, but it's like, oh, that's a really good year for a young wide receiver,
Especially as a wide receiver too.
Yeah, I think it's just that. Yeah, that's super true. I think it's just that Jefferson and Chase just being like, oh, these guys are vying with the greatest wide receivers of all time for the record immediately, and I think that makes it a lot. And like they're that good, so I think it makes it like kind of like overshadows him a little bit.
I also think just all sports right now, they want that instant gratification with these draft picks because we see it sometimes, right? We see Justin Jefferson. We see Jamar Chase. They come in and they're unbelievable. We see it a lot with running backs just because that's the nature of the running back position. But in the NBA, right, Luka comes in and it's like, oh my gosh, this dude is unbelievable right from the jump. Sometimes it takes guys a couple of years. Devontae Adams didn't come into the league as the best player, as the best wide receiver. He came in, he was fine. And then it was just like he just progressively got better and better and better. And then it was like, oh, look at that. He gets to be the number one with Aaron Rodgers. And boom. That it just was unbelievable. Cooper Kupp. I really liked Cooper Kupp coming out of Eastern Washington. I was a huge fan of his game. He didn't come into the league just torching everybody. He was good, and he just kept getting better and better in that offense. And then boom, Triple Crown winner. Not every wide receiver comes in and is the best wide receiver in the league or top 5 in the league from the jump. Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, they're outliers. But that doesn't mean that other players can't get into that top 5. And I think CeeDee Lamb has that potential because he came out of that draft class, which was the best wide receiver. I think it's the best wide receiver draft class in terms of just prospects. I don't know if it'll turn out that way because of, what happened with Ruggs and, all those, negative things. But in terms of prospects, that was unbelievable. And CeeDee Lamb is going to step up and he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And I think the fantasy football draft rankings, they recognize that. Dak Prescott gets numbers. That's one thing about him. Now, they may be fourth quarter numbers, but Dak Prescott gets numbers. And CeeDee Lamb is now going to have to be that guy, and I fully expect him to take over.
Yeah, so I got another guy for you. I think this is a guy, very different situation.
Okay, Chris Collinsworth.
Well, that's pretty good. But this is a guy that's in a very different situation than any of the guys we've talked about because he hasn't had a bunch of success. I still look at CeeDee Lamb and say, like, yeah, he has a bunch of success. Trevor Lawrence has not had much success at all. And he's a guy that has these Peyton Manning level expectations. Oh, he's one of the best prospects of all time. And people are now talking about him like he sucks. Like he's not good. Like he's a bust. We are 1 year into the Trevor Lawrence career where he had a very incompetent head coach and he didn't have good numbers. You know who else who didn't have good numbers? Basically every rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL. Almost no rookies have good numbers. And there's guys that have, made the playoffs, had success. Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Allen made the playoffs. Josh Allen still put up a terrible season, but it was not even close to where they were at as players. They were not at the level that they were even in that second year. So I'm expecting Trevor Lawrence to be a lot better. We look at the pieces around him. He's not that he doesn't have that good of weapons. However, he has a lot of speed at wide receiver, and he has a really, really good running back duo. Now, James Robinson tore his Achilles, big kind of asterisk there. Travis Etienne is also coming off of a major injury. I forget what it is. I think it was knee. But Etienne apparently looks fine. It doesn't seem like it's really affected him much. And that's a guy that's going to be able to be a receiver and a running back. He's going to line up in the slot. He's going to come out of the backfield. He's going to be huge as a security blanket for Trevor Lawrence, and he's going to be a really focal part of that offense. So you got those guys. You have Christian Kirk. Basically, I think it was every single wide receiver is like a 4-4 guy and under. Like it's just straight speed. It's not really a good wide receiving room, but it's just a bunch of speed, a bunch of guys that Trevor Lawrence can try to push the ball downfield. And the other thing is they're not going to be good in terms of a win-loss record because they're not good. They're a bad team. But offensively, they're going to put up numbers. So we're going to look back at Trevor Lawrence and go, oh my God, look at that jump he had from year one, from year two, when we should all be expecting the jump to happen. He's not just the run-of-the-mill draft pick. He's a generational talent, and I think we've kind of forgot that.
Yeah, I love Trevor Lawrence. I think, him coming out and him going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is unfortunate because, again, they had Urban Meyer. And we talk about, I think the Christian Kirk deal is one of the worst deals I've ever seen in my entire life, any sport. But at the same time, he is a massive upgrade. Like, even though it's horrible, the Jacksonville Jaguars receivers last year, these were the weapons that Trevor Lawrence was rolling out with. Marvin Jones Jr., Laviska Shenault, Laquan Treadwell, who was a bust 5 years ago, I believe, I think he came out of Oklahoma. Maybe it was Ole Miss, one of those two. Total bust for the Minnesota Vikings. Dan Arnold at tight end. DJ Chark was hurt. Guess they had Tavon Austin. All of a sudden this year, it's like, okay, they actually added some guys. They added Evan Ingram, and I'm not a huge Evan Ingram fan, but I think Travis Etienne, we've talked about him in videos before. I think that's huge for him because his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, line up in the slot, just be a playmaker all over the field, and a comfortable target for Trevor Lawrence. That is someone where, again, it's not going to be the same, but Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. You get Joe Burrow, his guy. They drafted Travis Etienne not because he was the most needed player, but because they knew that he would be able to perform well with Trevor. Because they've done it before. They won a national championship. I believe they were together when they won the national championship. I know Trevor won the national championship. But they went out there and they know each other very well. They know each other's skill set. Now Trevor Lawrence, who has a fantastic arm, he's got mobility. Matt, you brought up that speed. Trevor Lawrence is going to make some big-time deep ball throws. Last year, there were a lot of throws that Trevor Lawrence made last year because, again, people don't watch the Jaguars. I love watching young quarterbacks. I love watching young quarterbacks that I like coming out of college. I'm sorry to Mac Jones. I didn't like you whatsoever, so I don't watch you. Trevor Lawrence was a guy that I love to watch. And he was making throws where I'm looking at it and I'm like, this dude is unbelievable. Like that's a throw. Unfortunately, the receiver sucks and, he can't get open. But I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, this guy's going to be good. And that's very different from a lot of players where it's like, oh, yeah, he ended up throwing interceptions. But that was something that we knew about him coming out of college. It was, yeah, this guy is a gunslinger. Gunslingers work when they have receivers, when they have weapons. When they don't have weapons, they're still going to fire it in there. Trevor Lawrence now has receivers. And it's like, oh, Trevor Lawrence was bad last year. He threw for 3,600 yards, which may not seem amazing. It's actually not that bad for a player in that situation with those wide
And he
receivers.
threw a lot of picks because he's forcing the ball to, Laquan Treadwell. Like, that's not going to end well for you.
Yeah.
Dude, I think that the idea that Trevor Lawrence isn't good and stuff has got to be one of the most ridiculous takes out there. And it's a common thing. Like, a lot of people don't really have faith in him. He's going to be good. This happens. Like, a lot of people overreact after the rookie season for quarterbacks. And a lot of guys are just like, oh, this guy's not good. Look at Mac Jones. Mac Jones was going into as a guy starting the best situation, and he was the most pro ready guy, probably outside of Lawrence. Lawrence was in the worst situation. Like, he didn't have a chance to succeed. His coach got fired in the middle of the season. It was as bad as it could have been for his rookie year. Like, everything around him. And of course he wasn't going to succeed. But I don't know why people put that against him. Where Mac Jones, yeah, he did what you probably were kind of expecting him to do. Like, that's what I was expecting him to do, kind of exactly what he did, and the responsibilities he had. But Doug Peterson based offense, I'm excited for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's gonna be really good.
The other thing about Trevor Lawrence, you got to think about it in the long term. What division does he play in? Plays in the AFC South. What quarterbacks are in the AFC South? You've got Matt Ryan, old, going to retire. You have Ryan Tannehill, not very good. Maybe they end up going with Malik Willis, somewhere down the road. Who's a better quarterback, Malik Willis or Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence. Then you got Davis Mills, who sucks. I don't care. I don't care about, Davis Mills look kind of good. Shut up. All right? Shut up. You're wrong. Davis Mills is not a good quarterback. I watched him his entire career at Stanford.
I was going to say the Stanford fan he's coming out right now.
He sucks. He is not good. He has no future as a starting quarterback in the NFL. He can be a backup. I have no problem with that. But they are starting him this year, not because they believe he's the future. They are starting him because they are tanking for most likely Bryce Young. That is the reason he's starting. They could have gone out and gotten a much better quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, all of those guys. But Trevor Lawrence is sitting in that division. He's going to be the best quarterback. I mean, he may already be the best quarterback in that division. I think you could argue Ryan Tannehill.
Matt Ryan.
The problem is Matt Ryan's weapons are horrible. I have no faith in Michael Pittman.
They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine.
I'm not saying they're bad. I don't think the passing game is going to be very good, but they got Jonathan Taylor, the best O-line in football. They're going to be good. But in the long run, Trevor Lawrence is in a spot to where all of a sudden it's going to be in 3-4 years. Oh, look at that. The Jacksonville Jaguars are consistently winning their division. Why? Because the other teams, I fully think so. I think so.
Okay, yes, because when I look at Trevor Lawrence, I think yes, but then I look at the Jags and their incompetence, and
the incompetence may hold them back. Maybe Trevor Lawrence leaves the Jags, and maybe that's what he's going to have to do. Maybe that's his plan currently. But I mean, he's in a situation where he can take over that division. We all clown on the Christian Kirk deal. Maybe it works out. I'm not fully believing it. He's never had a 1,000-yard season, but he's also been behind DeAndre Hopkins, and a lot of other players. So maybe Christian Kirk is the guy that he needs. Maybe somebody else steps up in that receiving room. I don't know.
They gave him. He basically had the worst offense in the league last year to a below average offense this year. It's not good, but it's better.
Yeah. It's all you can say. Last year they got a 3% on their test. This year they scored a 45. It's still an F, but it's a much better F that was closer to passing. All right. It's better. It's a better roster for him. And hopefully because if Travis Etienne, I think that's the biggest thing. If Travis Etienne is the guy that he was out of college, this could be a pretty solid offense. Now, if he's not, because sometimes we get busts, with running backs. Also, he had the injury. If he comes in and it's he's looking like he doesn't have a huge future, he's not going to be a star, then this offense is going to really struggle. But if he comes out and it's like Alvin Kamara, or because that's what he was kind of drafted to be like, was Alvin Kamara, catch the ball, run the ball, use your balance, do that kind of thing. If he comes out like Alvin Kamara, it's we've seen what Alvin Kamara can do with bad offensive line and bad wide receivers. We've seen it the last 3 years because Michael Thomas has been hurt, basically. It's wow, An offense can still work if you have a running back that good. So I fully expect Trevor Lawrence. Again, Matt, I think you're right. They're not going to win a ton of games. Now, Chris Collins, okay. Anybody that watched, I believe, is the Hall of Fame game. Chris Collinsworth was saying some wild stuff. This dude, I'm watching it and I was like, I like this Jags team. I absolutely love Travis Etienne. And he was like, I'm looking at this team and I really think they have a Bengals, type of Leo. Like you look at last year and the way the Bengals were able to just turn it around. And I'm watching it. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the way that they drafted well, they just like totally turned it around. It was like Jaguars kind of did the same thing. They added some offensive weapons. And I'm like, okay, Chris Collinsworth. No, it's not going to be that. They're not going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. They're not going to make the Super Bowl. But they could be competent on offense. I think they'll lose a lot of games, but they could be in a lot more games, which is a major step for them. That's the last thing I got to say on Trevor Lawrence because Chris Collinsworth pissed me off when I was watching that. He's just like, now here's a team that I really think a lot of people are not sleeping on because Travis Etienne and, the other additions they've made, I really think, looking at the Bengals and Joe Burrow last year, what they were able to do, that's kind of what I'm thinking will happen with the Jaguars this year. As they proceed to just get obliterated by the Raiders. And he's like, now this isn't the team that'll be going out there. They're really going to win a lot of games this year. I'm like, dude, don't get that hyped up for him.
You have another guy? I'm out. That was the only two.
I think that I have one other guy that I want to talk about. His name is Simi Fehoko. Just kidding. Love Simi. But I really want to talk about Michael Thomas. I think Michael Thomas this year, looking at him, obviously, I said at the beginning of the show, I said at the end, if healthy, everything says, every report that has come out is Michael Thomas is healthy. They've also been saying, oh, he's looked as good as he's ever done. I don't take any account into that because everybody says that about everybody returning from any injury. No team's going to be like, yeah, our guy coming back is not that good. They're always going to say, oh, he looks better than ever. But they are saying he's healthy. That's the biggest thing. And I believe that Michael Thomas will be top 5 in receiving this year. Now, why do I say that? He's playing with Jameis Winston. And I fully believe Michael Thomas is still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I think this year he will be back in that top 10, wide receivers in the NFL. Now, I don't think he'll be top 5 just because he is going to be a little bit older. But Michael Thomas is going to be a very good route runner. And Jameis Winston loves to throw the football to a main target. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin each had top 5 wide receiver seasons with Jameis Winston. It was like, oh, Mike Evans got hurt. All of a sudden, Chris Godwin, wide receiver 1. And Jameis just flinging it to him. Michael Thomas, I think, is a better receiver than – I don't think he's better than Mike Evans right now. But I think he's better than Chris Godwin was. And Chris Godwin was number 3 in the NFL in receiving. And he's going to be open. And teams aren't going to be able to focus on him as hard because they actually have a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 3. Jarvis is a 3, fine. I don't think it's a horrible spot for him. I think he's better than some other wide receiver 3s. I think Chris Olave is going to really step up and be good. But they also have Alvin Kamara. And it's going to be a situation where, like, Jameis Winston's like, wow, I got options. But Michael Thomas is going to be open. I think that's the thing is, like, Mike Evans is a very different player than Michael Thomas because Mike Evans is just throw it to him. He's the best jump. I think he's the second best jump ball wide receiver in the NFL. You can just throw it to him. Michael Thomas is, I'm going to run a route. I'm going to be open, and I've got sure hands. I don't care if it's a slant route and I run it 38 times a game. I'm going to catch that football. That's what Drew Brees did, and he was a check down every time. And I think Michael Thomas coming into the year is going to be very slept on. I think the majority of his work will be at the beginning of the year because I think then teams are going to be like, shucks, he's back. No, we were really hoping he wasn't back. And then he's going to be back. And then at the end of the year, it's going to be Alvin Kamara. It's going to be Chris Olave really stepping up. But like Michael Thomas was just a consistent, oh yeah, this guy is on pace to be one of the best receivers in history based off of how dominant he was. I mean, he put up 149 receptions and 1,700 yards. 149 receptions. That's more than Cooper Kupp had last year. That's more than Cooper Kupp had last year. And everyone watched Cooper Kupp and they were like, oh my gosh, this guy's insane. And Cooper Kupp's playing with Sean McVay. I understand that Michael Thomas was Sean Payton, but he was also with Noodle Arm Drew Brees. All of a sudden, Michael Thomas, can run a deep route. Maybe not deep, but 25 yards down the field. And Jameis Winston can get it there. I think whether or not he's a top 5 receiver, I don't think he will be, but I think he's going to be top 5 in yards because Jameis Winston, the last time he played a full season, threw for 5,000 passing yards. Michael Thomas is going to get his yards.
And Michael Thomas is going to be the one there. I think Olave is great. I think Olave is a really good player. But Michael Thomas will be the one. And I think, like you said, the big thing for him, of course, is going to be health. There's a chance that he just doesn't look the same anymore. He's had some pretty serious injuries for a while. So that's kind of where I'm concerned on it. But if he's the same guy, then 100%, I think there's reason to believe that he's going to put up very similar seasons to those superstar seasons that he had, because he might not have the same amount of receptions, but he's going to get targeted a lot deeper down the field, where he was just kind of a reception monster and a great possession receiver. But instead of catching, say, a ball 10 yards down the field, he's going to catch a lot more passes that are in that 25-yard area, 20-yard area down the field, where he's picking up a lot bigger chunk plays. And their offense is also, like, they got a lot of good players now. Last year, it was so bad, dude. That was one of the worst offenses you could turn on the TV for. But the big thing is going to be health. Now, another thing that's going to kind of hurt them is that they definitely lost him on the O-line. Good thing for MT is that MT, I mean, we know we all know his favorite route is a slant. Running the slant it takes about a second and a half to get open. So if MT's run slants in a second and a half and your O-line's not good, that's another reason why he might even get more receptions. So I think in terms of numbers and stuff, I think he's definitely going to be up there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to be like, the problem is Michael Thomas, everyone laughs at Michael Thomas because he gets so mad so easily. And it's pretty funny. I love clowning on it, but I also, it's the same thing with Russell Wilson. I'm not a huge fan of his. I love to clown on him, but at the same time, you got to respect it. You got to respect how good he is. You got to respect how successful he's been. And yes, he's missed time, but I mean, come on. When you look at, prime Michael Thomas was unbelievable, and it's not like we're looking at him and it's like, oh, here's this 38-year-old wide receiver. He's 29. This is a 29-year-old wide receiver who I'm pretty sure didn't play last year because he didn't want to. Like when James, like at the beginning of the year, I think he wanted to play and then was like, he got hurt and it was like, okay, if I'm an NFL wide receiver, there's no way I'm stepping foot on the field to play with Taysom Hill. I don't care. Like, I'm not playing with that dude. He sucks. Like, I was hating on Davis Mills. Bro, I'm playing for Davis Mills. Like, I'm playing with him. Like, at least he'll throw me the football and, he can be accurate sometimes. Taysom Hill is horrible to play with. So I don't think he was with him whatsoever. Now, all of a sudden, he's playing with Jameis Winston. He's going to be fully committed. I think it's a similar situation to Allen Robinson where it's like, all right, this guy's going to be back. I think this is going to be a competitive team, and that's just going to fuel him because I know he's super competitive, which is super weird because he's like a total whiner on social media, but he's super competitive somehow, and it does not translate to his social media status. But yeah, I think it's going to be unbelievable, and they're going to be a really good football team, and they're going to be in games. And like, I know that they have, new coaching staff, but what did Jameis Winston get to listen to? Who did he get to listen to? Yes, he listened to Sean Payton, but he also listened to Drew Brees. I bet there are a few conversations that Drew Brees had with Jameis Winston where he goes, hey, you're the future of this team. You're supposed to be the guy that steps in. I know he's not playing right now, but Michael Thomas is that dude. Believe in Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. I guarantee you, Drew Brees was saying that all the time. He was like, bro, you got to listen to him. Hit him. When you have a guy like that, trust in him. And Jameis Winston, I think, is going to listen to that. I think that's all we got for tonight's show. Matt, you got something else? Let me hear it.
We got to go over the very, very worst teams in the league.
The Niners?
Oh, thanks. Hilarious. No, I want to talk about the teams that really suck. I already wrote a list. It's not very long. These aren't like, oh, I don't think this team's going to be that good. I think they're going to miss the playoffs. No, these are the teams that are going to be the worst teams in the league where if you look at your schedule as an opposing team, you go, oh, this is an easy dub. This is a gimme. You can't lose this game. These guys are terrible. They're among the worst in the league. So I wanted to spend some time to talk about them just because we don't spend a lot of time talking about teams that suck. But I figured we could go over these 5. You could tell me if there's any that you would add, or any that you don't think are on there. And basically, we can kind of go through and see what are the huge flaws in these teams. So I have 5 of them. I will name them all off right now and let me know what changes you kind of make to my list. I have the Texans, the Jaguars, the Seahawks, the Bears, and the Falcons. I think all of those teams are absolutely awful, and they will not win over 5 games. That's how bad I think they are. Would you change anything?
I think all those teams are terrible. Love that you included the Houston Texans because I'd be seeing some things about the Texans that I'm like kind of surprised by. But I know that this team gets hype. I still don't believe in them. I don't believe in their coaching whatsoever. I still think the Detroit Lions got to be thrown in that mix. And I understand that they have some good players. I understand. I think they're going to be in games, but I don't think that they have the personnel just yet. I think if Jameson Williams started the season and he was healthy and he got a full season to get under his belt, this is a team where it's like, okay, they have a good offensive line. They have Swift. I don't believe in Swift whatsoever. For fantasy purposes, I think he's good because he's a good pass catcher. He's going to get those PPR points. He's going to be unbelievable. But as a pure running back, he's not very good running the ball. He's good at catching the ball. But Jared Goff is your quarterback. You're playing in a division where, yes, maybe the Chicago Bears match up against them and they're like, hey, we can win against the Bears. But I think they're going to be the team that, they were on Hard Knocks this year. A lot of people are going to fall in love with a lot of their players. And they're going to get a lot of hype because of it. But they don't close games because Jared Goff isn't a closer. It was like, last year they lose so many games. Why? And it's like, because Jared Goff down the stretch is unable to perform. And I don't think that they have the personnel where in any sort of close game, they're going to be able to pull it out. They're not a team that you're going to look at and you're like, this is an easy win. We're going to blow them out. I think they're a team where you look at them and you're like, we're going to win this game. This is a win. Because no matter what quarterback that you have, whether it's, any good quarterback, Kirk Cousins is going to go out there. Down the stretch, Kirk Cousins is going to make Jared Goff look terrible. You're going to look at it, and even if you're, the Arizona Cardinals, so I think they're going to be an average team in the NFC. They're going to make that team look terrible down the stretch. I don't think down the stretch of games they're going to be able to pull it out. We saw the same thing last year, and I know Dan Campbell is going to be, he's going to be crying every game. I have no problem with coach. I have to say this. I have no problem with coaches crying. I think it is very, very good for, coaches cry. It shows a lot of emotion. Dan Campbell cries every single time I've ever seen him in an interview. And it's like, okay, at some point it loses its juice, right? You can't, every time it's like, man, you guys fought so hard, man. I just feel so bad for you guys, man. The way they worked their tail off, man. I just really wanted them to get that win. We saw that 6 times, I swear, last year. And we're going to see it, 6 times again. Every single time. At halftime, he's probably like, man, I know we're down by 4. But Goff, man, I just believe in you, man, so much, man.
So you're straight.
Watch Hard Knocks. Watch Hard Knocks, and every single time he's like, I just fight for you guys, man. That's all I think about. It's you guys. It's every single speech he's ever given is just him bawling his eyes out. And I'm like, dude, okay. I get it crying. Cry. Go for it. But not every damn time you give a speech. It's really frustrating.
Okay, I've only seen him do it twice, so I haven't seen it that much. But jeez. I will say this. I'm not as much of a Dan Campbell hater as you are. But I heard someone say this is last season, bro. This is last season. This is about middle of the season last year. Middle to late season. Someone told me that Dan Campbell's a better head coach than Kyle Shanahan.
Dude, people love him. People love Dan Campbell. And I'm like, dude, I don't know why. And I get the people are going to love him a lot more because of Hard Knocks. And they're like, oh, man, he's so emotional. And it's like, dude, yeah, he's so emotional. But, dude, he's always that emotional.
No, but that's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah. It's just going to be a situation where it's like, I like a lot of their young players. I think I love Matt. I'm a huge Jameson Williams fan. Yeah. I like Aiden Hutchinson. But, I don't.
Okay, I got a counterpoint though about your whole take. So one, we're talking about closing games. That's one of the big things you brought up. I think bringing in Aiden Hutchinson does that for you because they did not have anyone to close games defensively. Look at their defense. Their defense is still not good, but it was even worse last year. And their offense is their offensive line is pretty good. Their wide receivers, pretty good.
Pretty good.
Amon St. Brown, Jamison Williams, DJ Chark.
Yeah, but Williams is hurt. DJ Chark has
So when
not.
is Williams going to be back? That's a big thing.
I believe it's like November.
Oh, it's that late.
Like I think. I mean, he got injured in the national championship game.
Yeah,
and it was Achilles or ACL. I can't remember which one. Like it's a major recovery.
It's ACL, I believe.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like on offense, it's like
okay,
I
don't think they're gonna be good. I just don't think they're gonna be that bad. I want to talk about these other teams though too, because we've been talking about the Lions for a while. Let's talk about these other bad teams. So I'm gonna go through real quick because we've been going live for a while now. I'm gonna go through real quick. I'm gonna tell you like their fatal flaw, for each of the teams or why I think they're gonna suck. And
quarterback
I just
for
don't think
all of them.
Yeah, Texans no, not all of them. Most of them.
What was the team that doesn't have a bad quarterback?
I don't think I'll get into it.
The Jags.
Yeah. So Texans, bad quarterback. They're going to have a good run game, and they're getting a lot of hype because it's like, oh, Davis Mills can manage the game, and they're going to have a good run game. Their quarterback is not good. He's not going to be able to push the ball downfield. They don't have a good receiving core. They have like Brandon Cooks, and that's it. Because they had a big blow when John Michie got hurt. And their defense is not good at all either. Their defense is still a couple years away from being any good. So they're going to lose a lot of games. If they had a decent enough defense, they could win a few games and they could play some tough games and they could hang in there and then have a couple almost like lucky wins. I don't want to say lucky, but like late games where like they get the ball at the end and then they march on the field and they were only down by 2 because they had a touchdown the possession before and they kick a game-winning field goal, win by 1, But their defense isn't really good enough to get enough of those to not be one of the worst teams in the league. Next team, the Jaguars. They have a good quarterback. We just talked about him. But their offense is still limited. They don't really have a great offensive line. The receiving core isn't good, even though it's upgraded. They have a great running back room. Woohoo. And then their defense is absolutely terrible. So they're going to suck. Another good thing for them, though, to be fair, they have a bad division they play in. Next team, the Seahawks. Kind of the opposite. They're in a really good division, and they are awful. They have another terrible quarterback. Geno Smith / Drew Lock have a couple good receivers. The O-line still isn't good.
Matt, you need to put some respect on the greatest running back of all time, Rashad Penny, who Seahawks fans believe is the second coming of Marshawn Lynch.
I saw someone say that the Seahawks are going to finish the year top 5 in rushing. That is the stupidest take. Like, come on. How? They're going to stack the box every time because Geno Smith is the quarterback. So they're going to be awful. They're going to be terrible. Their defense isn't good either. And then 2 more teams. This is the other team I think has a pretty good quarterback, the Bears. Everyone hates Justin Fields. Oh, Justin Fields sucks. He's awful. I think Justin Fields is really good. I think Justin Fields got drafted by a team that had absolutely no business drafting him because they were a year away from basically blowing it up. Why would you draft your quarterback then, waste his whole rookie they totally screwed up Justin Fields' career. I think he's a really good player still. Last year, he had nothing, and he was a rookie, and he did that. Like, oh, what a surprise. Same situation with Trevor Lawrence that we just talked about or like in that segment a little while ago. But then besides that, they have nothing. Literally, I like Justin Fields. I like David Montgomery, and then they suck. It's terrible. They have an awful offensive line. They have no receiving core, basically, outside of Darnell Mooney. And then their defense has slowly been depleted over time. They lose Khalil Mack. Like, they just lose everyone. They traded him away, and they blew it up. So their defense is not the same defense when they made the playoffs a couple of years ago. And then the final team is the Falcons. And I think the Falcons are so interesting because I actually think that they could be super legit as early as like 2 years. They have amazing weapons. Well, one of them's suspended, but they're going to have amazing weapons. However, their quarterback is Marcus Mariota. Maybe like Ritter. He's super raw. I don't know how their offensive line is, honestly. I didn't really look into any changes there. But their defense is so terrible. Their defense is absolutely Swiss cheese. They're going to be obliterated on the defensive side of the ball.
They at least have one cornerback, AJ Terrell.
They do. No, they do have.
Other than Terrell, though,
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all the teams that I think are really, really bad.
Yeah, I think all those teams are, the situation. Like some of them have really good pieces. Matt, I like the take on the Falcons. Like they're 2 years away if they do it right. Because Drake London, Calvin Ridley, and Kyle Pitts, if they draft a quarterback early, and they don't rock out with Desmond Ridder and they keep him as a backup.
Real quick, I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just got to say, I think that could be the best receiving core in the league in a couple of years. I think it could be viewed as that. I think
and if they get a quarterback, because I don't want Desmond, I don't think Desmond Ridder is very good. If they draft, a quarterback first overall, third overall, whoever it is, maybe
Bryce
Young or Williams or whoever, CJ Stroud, whoever, they're going to come into a situation very different from Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, where it's like, dude, they got no wide receivers. This team sucks. They're going to come in. It's like you've got the best tight end prospect ever. And then you've got two really good young wide receivers. That's going to be fantastic. But again, their defense is going to be really bad. I think the Houston Texans, again, they're getting some hype, because of Dameon Pierce, Davis Mills last year. They're tanking. I know in the NFL, teams don't tank like in the NBA. NBA is like blatantly obvious and it's hilarious. They're like, oh, yeah, I just traded away every single player that I have. And you're like, I feel like that shouldn't be allowed. The NFL, you can't really do that. But all you have to do is you just got to start a guy like Davis Mills. And you're like, boom, look at that, tanking. They're not going to be good. Davis Mills is going to have some games where he puts up good numbers. But, I like Brandon Cooks. I think he's super underrated. But Brandon Cooks is the only wide receiver. No offense. I like Nico Collins coming out of Michigan. But, he's not ready, I don't think, to be that number 2. Brevin Jordan, maybe. I liked him out of Miami. Good pass catcher, but he's really undersized. I want to say he's only like 6'3" at the tight end position. So
last time I checked, he's playing slot for them. That's what they get Tyler Johnson too, which is a little interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird situation. The Seattle Seahawks, I love it. 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 Sorry, I got to go grab something. I love it. I love it. You know why I have this hat? Well, technically, I have this hat because I got it at my first ever football game I ever went to. But I love it now because Seattle Seahawks hat, but it's burning. It's up in flames, and I love it. I think it's fantastic because every time the Seahawks fail, I just go, boom, and I have a great day. Because I know that Seattle Seahawks fans are upset. And that gives me pleasure. That gives me happiness. The Ravens can lose, and I'll be upset. The Seahawks lose. It's a good day. It's a good day for me. So I think it's fantastic. I think Drew Lock is terrible. I think Geno Smith is terrible. I like DK. Geno Smith and DK Metcalf are terrible together. Like last year, Geno Smith could not get the football to DK Metcalf. It was really annoying. I had DK in fantasy. I'm like, dude, just throw it to him. And he was just like, no, I'm throwing to Tyler Lockett. So if you're a fantasy football player, Tyler Lockett is Geno Smith's guy. He does not throw to DK.
Can I take another take I heard about the Seahawks? Somehow I get this on my feed on Twitter, but someone also said, and this was a pretty big Seahawks account, that DK's going to have 1,800 yards this year. My immediate thought was, Geno Smith or whoever's starting their starting quarterback, they might not have 1,800 yards passing. That's the real accomplishment there.
For him to get 1,800 yards, they would have to throw to him every play. But I don't think it would work because it would just be 3 and out every time. Be like, Geno Smith underthrown again. Honestly, there's a better chance that Geno Smith breaks his hand punching DK Metcalf in the face because he's mad about Geno Smith than there is DK Metcalf getting 1,800 receiving yards. And it's happened before. Geno Smith broke his hand punching his teammate in the face, which is just about the worst possible way you can get injured in the NFL. Oh, you were injured? Okay, how'd you get injured? I punched my teammate in the jaw. I injured myself. Like, dude, that's horrible. And then what was the final team? What was the final team that you brought up? Can you repeat them?
Texans, Jags, Seahawks, Bears, Falcons. So Jags and Bears.
Bears. Yeah, I really like the Bears. I loved Justin Fields. I was so mad. when we were in that, because I remember the draft because we were chilling in there. We had Mike in there, we had Anthony in there, we had Coach Hugh Jackson in there. We were having a good time that night. And then we're sitting there and it was like the Bears traded up. And I'm like, oh no. Because he was my favorite quarterback in the draft. I didn't think he was the best quarterback in the draft, but he's my favorite one. I loved watching him at Ohio State. Ohio State's one. A lot of my family's from Ohio, so I like to root for Ohio State. I really liked him, and I was like, it's the worst place that you can go. One, they've never had a 4,000-yard passer in the history of the Bears franchise, which is ridiculous because they've been a franchise since 1845. Still can't get a quarterback. But I mean, the wide receivers aren't good. They have Darnell Mooney. I love the running back. I love David Montgomery. The offensive line is kind of poor. I think Justin Fields is really good. I just think he's going to be really having to work hard. I think it's going to be the Andrew Luck treatment, but he's not as good as Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was like the only quarterback I've ever seen come into a NFL career and just have a piss poor offensive line and somehow make it work. He's the only one I've ever seen do it. And yeah, you can maybe say Joe Burrow. Andrew Luck had like the worst offensive line in the NFL. I think Joe Burrow has like a below average offensive line.
I mean, there's a lot. Okay, the thing is, there's a lot of bad offensive lines. Like we always talk about, like average. It's like, well, how does 25 teams have bad offensive lines?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is a bad offensive line is not elite. Like it's like Tom Brady this year has a bad offensive line, even though it's probably average. Maybe it's above average, but it's gonna look bad because if your quarterback keeps getting sacked, you're like bad offensive line. But compared to the rest of the league, it may be better than a lot of other teams. It's just that's a funny comment. That's true. Everybody has a bad offensive line, but Andrew Luck was getting sacked 55 times a year. That's gonna be Justin Fields. The benefit is he can at least move. They don't have a defense anymore because they lost Khalil Mack. So I really hope they draft well next year. Get them something. They lost Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson didn't even want to play there. And I love Allen Robinson. He was like, no, I'm sorry. Like
he was so checked out last season. It was crazy.
Yeah. He's going to be so good this year. And a lot of people are, okay, maybe not like so good, but he's going to be really solid.
We just got to see where he's at, like physically, I think. Because he lost a lot of, like last year, he didn't separate at all.
Well, he's playing with Sean McVay, so.
That helps. That helps a lot.
Look at that. Allen Robinson, 30 yards of space. Wow.
Yeah, I like Allen Robinson. I liked him a lot before he kind of slowed down the last couple of years, but it makes complete sense. You can't. It's kind of hard to put it on him in a way.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We're super excited for the season to start. Hopefully we can do some other NFL videos, maybe, kind of getting really ready for the NFL season. But thanks so much. Subscribe to AFS on YouTube, for weekly content talking about all the different sports, trying to have a good time. Matt and I do our show every Monday. Matt does, a lot of other shows too. I do an NBA show. So we're making a lot of content. We're really trying to grow it, really trying to take it to the next level. But thank you so much for watching. Subscribe. We'll see all of you again next time.